So everyone, good morning and welcome to this talk. I'm Lilin. I'm an organizational developer from Hypo Oberösterreich. Before joining Hypo this July, I was working as an Agile coach at a software company. My talk today is about learning organizations. I assume you will agree with me that business agility is essentially about how fast we adapt and how fast we deliver. And how fast we deliver and how fast we adapt depends heavily on how fast we learn. So therefore, business agility needs learning organizations. Even though organizations today might acknowledge the importance of learning, and we are busy spending a lot of time and money and energy in sending people to trainings in personal developments, schedules, programs, as well as hosting or having meetings, events to improve. Yet my question is, have all these efforts paid off? So in order to find out have these efforts to pay off, I needed some tools to let me and the teams I coach and the organization I coach to answer these questions. Are we learning? How are we learning? How fast are we learning? And what we like to have happen? Against such thoughts, I developed a tool some months ago. I've used it. Here you're seeing a simple version of it. I've used it as an alternative to retros and health checks. My ambition is that someday it will be able to tell the agility landscape of a team, a department, and an organization, and hence enable quick decision making. My talk is structured according to the components of this tool. The second part would be about the y-axis, the vertical axis, and the third part would be about the x-axis, the horizontal one. And then we look at it as a whole together, and I will end my talk with some key takeaways. By the way, if during my talk you find yourself relating to this picture, please send a message in the chat or raise your hand so that I can adjust my talk accordingly. I've also listed some terms in this part so that I will also pause for you to answer questions for 3 times during the whole talk. And each time when I pause, there will be this summary slides. Now, I would like to already pause for the first time and check if there is any questions from the audience. I don't see any in the chat. Eric will help me to see if there's any.
I am checking. There are no questions at the moment.
Okay, good.
Does somebody have a question in here?
Yeah. I would like to avoid accumulating technical debt, so I will just pause and we have enough time during the talk. So the kind of learning I'm concerned about is single loop and double loop learning. Chris Argyris put forward this concept in the 1970s and described single loop learning as like a thermostat automatically turns on the heat whenever the temperature in a room drops below 69 degrees, right? Double loop learning just like the thermostat asking the question of why am I set to 69 degrees? And then explores whether or not some other temperature might more economically achieve the goal of heating the room. I personally find this definition too narrow. After all, it's already 50 years when he first put forward this concept, and I expanded to single loop learning as a system asking itself, do we do the right things? Do we do the things right? While double loop learning, the system asking itself, do we do the right things? And what kind of outcome do we aim at? And how do we know that we do the right things? For me, outcome involves a change in human behavior, while outputs are things like tasks, action items, deliverables, etc. So for example, if we have a need to improve collaboration, which involves a change in human behavior, and we said that we organize a team building event to achieve it, this would be, if the event is organized and successfully executed, it's an output completed. And the outcome and output constitutes the y-axis, the vertical axis of the tool, as you can see on the right corner. The more we move to the top, the more abstract it is, like something like work please or something like that. And the more we go down, the more detailed it is, like exactly what we are doing, like subtask, task level. Okay, now I will already pause for another time to check if there is any questions from the audience. Double loop learning tends to be more outcome oriented, not all of them. Single loop by single loop more tend to be output oriented. If there is no further question,
You may continue. There are no questions in the chat, and I believe nobody has a question, right? Or...
Okay, yeah. Just let me know if I'm throwing bombs of terms and unfamiliar things on you. It's on me to adjust it. So we talk about one thing though. When I say learning, I use it interchangeably as knowledge discovery. Means that how we discover knowledge during our work, not just the learning we used to think about going to trainings and development programs and all this stuff. So if there's no question, I will go to the x-axis about how do we learn as Homo sapiens. Usually we go through different stages. Now I would like to ask you to follow me intuitively and think of a time when you find yourself in a new environment, like moving to a new city, joining a new circle of friends, starting a new job, or even stepping into the Giggler Timmer just now, for the first time in an Agile event. You tend to be more explorative and just with the mindset of just do it. Just find it, not familiar environment, just find a seat. And then at some point, you observe that people tend to avoid the first line, some emergent patterns, or you find the seat you choose is near to the door where people come in and out. It's kind of annoying. And you started to look for better seats. And as time goals, you find some best spot or good spots that you might be. And then you might stick to it next time when you go to the Giglet-Zimmer. And this is where you find yourself in the domain of good practices and best practices. And the good thing is that next time you go to another room, other than the Giglet-Zimmer, you don't have to start over again from the novel domain, or you might already start in the imagined domain by observing what people do, and maybe also the good practices and best practices when you find out which fits your needs better. Note that whether or not a practice is novel, emergent, good, or best is relative and context dependent on you as the one applying this practice. What I mean by that is, for example, you find yourself in an organization, a team, a department with a need to improve collaboration. And you hear someone said, well, do a retro. And even though retros are established practices in the Agile community, your organization might not know about how this is done and what it is about and all these things. And to your company or to your organization, department, whoever you are doing this retro to, these are actually no practices. Yeah. And now we've come to the third part, summary of terms. I actually already threw a lot of terms, and this would be the last one. And I would like to ask if there is any questions in the audience, online audience, and in the room.
So far, I don't see any questions in the chat, and also not here in the room.
Okay.
So continue.
So again, if you look at the right, top right corner, this is the tool, and we have gone through the y-axis, which is about outcome and output, single loop and double loop learning, and the x-axis about how we discover knowledge according to our level of knowledge, of course, and which falls mainly into four domains: novel, imagined, good, and best. And yes, what does that mean for that? What is the implication? The first implication is that if we detect some movement on the outcome level, we can say that, wow, this would be some detectable double loop learning happening. Because in the end, outcome-oriented double loop learning tend to be more outcome-oriented. For example, do a retro. If next time you do it and you find out that it's already in the imagined domain, and then as a result of that, improved collaboration also moved, like pulling it to the right, then we know that that's detectable double loop learning. One thing though, the first time for example, there's also one thing I didn't mention, organize a team building event. Some time back in time, like, I don't know, 40 years ago, team building was not that popular. Nobody heard about it. It was, I suspect, in the novel practice domain when companies started to do it. But nowadays, after years of practices, and it actually has moved to the best practice domain, which means that actually doesn't matter if I organize it or you organize it or people organize it, other people organize it, we can expect what we get. However, if we try to use team building event to improve collaboration, repeatedly, but improved collaboration actually didn't move to the right, it's a good indicator of potentially single loop learning. I'm not saying that it is. I said that it's a good indicator. If you repeatedly do it and try and didn't see movement in the outcome. If you were in the keynote speech this morning, actually the domains of good practices and best practices tend to be more exploiting, borrowing the terms from our keynote speaker. And on the left, the novel and emerging domain tend to be exploring. And which comes to my second implication of this tool. I actually use reactive on the right side, which actually similar to exploiting. And on the left side, if you move left, it tends to be more explorative and innovative and proactive. Here in this domain, when we do something, we proactively try out things like in the emerging domain to achieve an outcome. Right? On the left side, it's more about efficiency. On the right side, the good and best practice domain, it's more about how we increase efficiency, because the things you already accumulated knowledge from the left to the right, and now it's the question, we already know the causality of the things, and the focus would be efficiency. And here we see that there is a concentrated areas. What that means is, imagine you have two teams, and you categorize the things that they do. Yeah. And you find out that team one, 40% of the things that they do fall within the best practice domain and 30% in the good practice domain. And we can pretty well say that this team tends to be more reactive. The system the team is in is more reactive, while team two would find itself in a more innovative system, because 40% of the things that they do tend to be innovative. It falls in the emerging domain. So the question is now, it doesn't have to be team one is better than team two, or the system they are in, we cannot compare about it. It's all about what we would like to have, what we like to have achieve as managers or C-level, and you look at it and you say, okay, team one is fine because they all do this operative stuff, then it fits. We don't have to change anything. Or you say that, wow, we tend to be not innovative. We would like to be more innovative next time. And then you can find out on the basis of this distribution and start talking about what kind of distribution would we like to see more next time. You can also use, as this is before, the above is before and down is after, and to see if learning is happening in the system, if we've achieved what we wanted to achieve. The last point about this second implication is that it's not that it's better, the more innovative is better, like 100% in the emerging domain. It's not better if it's 100% in the best practice domain. There is a range that we need to align with each other on the healthy, how healthy the system is. It's like, I don't know, imagine between 30 and 40% based on your organization, your team, your department is in. The third, and also the easiest one, if there's any, if you do these sessions with the team, and then 3 months later, you see that things are moving to the right, you can pretty sure say that there is learning. There has been learning happening in the system, the detectable movements. So again, with concentrated areas, detectable double loop learning on the outcome level, and detectable movements on all together, This tool is aimed to answer the questions that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. Are we learning? How are we learning? Is there a health range? And how fast are we learning, and what would we like to have happen? As I mentioned, I use it as an alternative to retros or health checks. If you know about it, when teams spend every quarter 3 hours together talking about, for example, using the Spotify health check and see how they can improve. The challenge I faced at that time was that action items decided or committed just went to a black box, or these teams doesn't have enough power, so to say, to move the things. Therefore, I come up with this tool to see if there's a way to visualize the change of learning in the system, so that if people see it, people will be able to come up with solutions. I do see this tool as a first lightening up or kick off to turn the dinosaur into the unicorn. It's just the first step. At the moment, I'm working on the automation of this tool to generate the visualization. I would be very much glad to connect with you. If you have any thoughts, if you think about how you can apply it in your context, how to customize it, I would be happy to connect with you afterwards. This is, in fact, how it looked like in the practice, how I use it. I use a clean language-based survey to find out the location of staff. And here you see two teams. They find themselves completely in different systems. The one on the left is more reactive, while the one on the right is more, I would say, explorative and innovative. And based on this visualization, I actually went to the managers, people with decision makers, to find out what they would like to have seen and how they would like to do it with the team. And then we go to the teams and discuss with them. Okay. Some key takeaways of my talk. Since the title is less of copy pasting, more of sense making, you might be wondering, what does that have to do with what I just presented? 3 points. The first one is about copy pasting and sense making. Copy pasting works well in the good and best practice domain. I do experience during my work as an Agile coach that current efforts to transform or improve our ways of working focus more on copy pasting existing best and good practices and frameworks. And the efficiency of effectiveness of such copy pasting depends on the context. Copy pasting is not always wrong or bad. In fact, copy pasting is the most efficient strategy because it does not require reinventing a new view. You just copy paste. However, in certain contexts, such strategy can be counterproductive, and reinventing the view is more effective. I'm not saying efficient, it's effective, which has something to do with achieving an outcome. In many contexts, there's no right or wrong, and therefore, I use less of and more to emphasize the need to escape the trap of binary thinking. Right, wrong, yes, no, like, dislike, agree, disagree. Since I'm experiencing an imbalance, as I was saying, I would like to ask everyone to look beyond the Tellerrand and focus more on sense-making the context before deciding whether or not copy-pasting would be an ideal action. The tool introduced here is designed to support teams, departments, and organizations to sense-make through visualization, visibility of change in collective learning, and objective indicators. For me, it serves as the necessary beam that enables different learnings to fly towards one direction. And that one direction is business agility. The key message here is that we need more focus on creating conditions for sense making. Sense making here with sense making, I'm actually following how Dave Snowden defines it from the Cynefin Framework. He defines it as how we make sense of the world so we can act in it. I think this serves as the cornerstone to achieve learning organizations and turning, as I said, turning the first step to turn the dinosaur into a unicorn. Okay, thank you for your attention. And thank you for the organizers for this great opportunity to exchange. Also special thanks to my colleagues Serena Denkmeyer and Claudia Schneebauer-Kusenbauer for their feedback. Now I would like to know if there is questions from the audience.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
See you.